The college Republicans at Cornell found themselves in what has become, for college Republicans, a fairly typical situation. They are Republicans and they're conservatives, but at the same time, their nominee for the presidency is Donald Trump, which puts them in a bit of a bind. And so at Cornell, the college Republicans have now released their endorsement for the presidency, and it's gotten them in a little bit of trouble. Why should become abundantly clear to you. We're going to read some sections from this press release that they put out. Our organization does not solely represent the Republican Party. Our first responsibility is to our members, libertarians, moderates, neoconservatives, and everyone in between. We value our ideological diversity and welcome differing perspectives. The Cornell Republicans cannot, in good faith, endorse our party's nominee. Mr. Trump should not be the face of American conservatism. Instead, we are proud to endorse the true conservative in the election, Gary Johnson. While we do not agree with all of his positions, we firmly support his devotion to free trade, states' rights, and other conservative principles. His straight candor and polite conduct contrast with Mr. Trump's visceral rhetoric and angry demeanor. And so they put this out, making clear that although they are part of the Republican Party, they plan to be Republicans. At this point, they cannot endorse the Republican nominee, and so they're going for Gary Johnson, which has led to them losing their certification as part of the College Republican network across the country.
Right. I am so proud of these students. I can't even, because first of all, understand that this network of Republican organizations is very much the cheerleader of the Republican Party, regardless of who the candidate is, right? And so it's a symptom of what I think is this virus in our political system, which forces you to play party politics. And some people have a mind of their own, and they don't believe in party politics. They don't believe in just being a cheerleader for one party, regardless of, you know, what type of ridiculous policy ideas come from that party. And so, look, I guess, generally speaking, I'm a Democrat, but I don't like the Democratic candidate too much right now. And so I don't know what I'm going to do, but I certainly am not going to go around endorsing her. So I like that they have a mind of their own. I like that, you know, they're doing what they feel is right. And this is based on principles. And any organization that behaves based on principles has my praise. Now, that's not to say that I agree with them or that Gary Johnson is the candidate that I would vote for. I'm not a fan of Gary Johnson either. But nonetheless, if that's the politician that they feel reflects their party in a more positive way, then sure, go ahead and endorse him. I feel like that's the right way to go about it. It shows that they have a mind of their own, and I love that.
Exactly. Although if we actually broke down policies with them, we'd probably disagree with quite a few.
No, I disagree with them on almost all policies. I disagree with Gary Johnson when it comes to his fiscal conservatism, right? But nonetheless, I mean, if this is how they really identify, then they should endorse the candidate that they identify with.
And you got to admire that these are young people, politically active, willing to join an organization like the College Republicans, which has got to be a death sentence for much of your dating in college. But they're willing to do it. And there's also an element of self-preservation here, because these are people who some of them, they say neoconservatives, moderates, maybe some of them are moderates, but they want conservatism to be popular and for more people to be conservatives. And so you can't have someone like Donald Trump being the face of conservatism in the modern day. Whether he loses the election or wins the election, simply him being out there, being the representative of the Republican Party, that hurts the brand. And that's one of the reasons that you see that identification as a Republican, and indeed as a conservative, is lower than it's been historically. It's because of people like this being the face of the party. And so it makes sense for them to distance themselves from him, even though for them personally, it's both immediately gotten them decertified, and then for many of them, I wouldn't be surprised, like, you know, the amount of strike back the Republicans have. The individuals who've signed on to this might find someday, if they run for office, they're going to have some problems in the Republican Party.
I actually disagree with that. I mean, look, it's a possibility, but I think what this story also demonstrates, which I absolutely love, is this stark contrast between, you know, older political figures and younger, younger individuals who are interested in politics, right? And so young people are interested in third-party candidates. Young people don't play ball.
I got some stats for you on that, too.
Oh, we'll get to the stats, because I've read them, too, and they're really interesting. Young people will not play ball with traditional politics. They want to shake things up because they're more concerned with identity as opposed to, you know, political or party identification, right? And what I mean by identity is, what are the policies that you find appealing, right? And if there's a politician who happens to be from your party that doesn't really represent the policy ideas that you like, why would you support that person? Old school politics, traditional politics would say, hey, whatever, you got to do what you got to do. This is the candidate that we have. But no, I love that young people aren't going to buy into that.
Yeah.
So even if I disagree with them on their policy ideas, which I do to a pretty great extent, I still love that they have a mind of their own and they're pushing back against this notion that they have to support Trump just because he's a Republican.
Yeah. So let's talk about the decertification, because they've basically gotten the axe from the national organization. These college Republicans at any individual university obviously report back to the national organization. And you might say, well, this certainly seems like a violation of their free speech rights. Again, although it's the Republican Party, it's a private organization. It has nothing to do with the government, so free speech really doesn't apply here. They said the New York Federation of College Republicans put out a statement saying clubs are within their right not to endorse certain candidates within the party and decide to reallocate their resources down the ballot. What is unacceptable, however, is using a party-affiliated organization as a tool to support another party's candidate in an election, whomever that candidate may be and whatever office the election may be for. And I read into that a little bit of, we totally understand, but we can't have you supporting a Libertarian Party candidate. And look, I understand where they're coming from.
I do too.
They get money. I mean, so they did the right thing,
yeah,
even though they can't be decertified as a result.
What I wonder, though, is whether or not the New York Federation of College Republicans understands how destructive their behavior is, right? So if you have, I don't know, like a chimpanzee running for the Republican ticket, like, are you going to go ahead and support him just because he identifies as a Republican? I mean, how stupid is that reasoning?
Some percentage would.
I know. And by the way, it's not...
They share a lot of our DNA. Closest relative.
That's true. It's not indicative of the Republican Party. I mean, you have Democrats who use the same type of so-called logic in pushing for a candidate who might not even represent the party in the best way. And it drives me crazy. No, we should expect better of our candidates, right? We should demand more. We shouldn't just, you know, go ahead, put our arms in the air and go ahead and vote for whoever ends up being the nominee. I think Trump is a disaster. I think Hillary Clinton is a disaster. Like, I don't blame anyone who identifies with either party and refuses to vote for either candidate.
Yeah, and so the obvious follow-up to this is then saying, well, doesn't it seem like a lot of young Democrats would want to not endorse Hillary Clinton and instead go for someone like Jill Stein or some other candidate? Maybe even some of them might prefer Gary Johnson, although I think that that's bananas. And yeah, they are totally free to do that. They'll probably be decertified as a result of it. But if they want to make a statement, that's what college activism is supposed to be about. It's about exploring your options, trying to redefine what American politics is about, to try to make a big change while you still have the energy that people like me who go to sleep as soon as I go home, we don't have anymore. You're supposed to be out there making that change.
You make such a good point. And what we've lost on college campuses is this praise towards students who use critical thinking, right? Like, we don't want them to think critically about anything. We want to put them in these neat little boxes where we can predict exactly how they're going to vote, what they're going to think, how they're going to behave. No, I don't want that. I want you young people to mix shit up. And that's exactly what's happening here, and it's great. Yeah.
Now let's talk about the numbers. I did allude to that. An Investor Business Daily TIPP poll completed on September 1st put Gary Johnson's support amongst 18 to 24-year-olds at 33%. Pretty high. 1 out of 3 of the youngest voters do support him, which is ahead of Trump at 17%. It's actually twice what Trump has amongst those youngest voters. Jill Stein has 13%, and Hillary Clinton at 37%. So Hillary Clinton narrowly has the lead there. But considering that Gary Johnson is polling generally at 8 to 11%, doesn't get much news coverage, isn't going to be included at this week's town hall, for 1 out of 3 young voters to support him is pretty amazing. And it speaks to the power of social media and the proliferation of news organically, obviously.
You get hours of extra content if you're a Young Turks member. TYTnetwork.com/join.
Go ahead, girl.